Welcome everyone to the Elevating Your Potential podcast, where we enlighten middle school and high school student athletes about the realities of college sports. And we have a great guest on today. I've been excited about this one for a couple weeks. So before we get into asking her questions about her story, here's her little bio. Vanessa is a former Division I soccer player from Kingwood, Texas. She was named first team All-District 3 times, honorable mention All-State once, and a 3-time academic All-District selection at Kingwood Park High School. She also played club soccer for the Challenge SC club, and she was also named captain to that team. After high school, Vanessa took her talents to SMU, where she was named to the All-Rookie All-Conference team in 2015, first team All-Conference 2016, and a Conference All-Tournament team in 2017. And she was also selected to the preseason All-Conference team in 2017. Vanessa graduated from SMU with her bachelor's in sport management with a specific, we kind of graduated the same degree, sport performance and leadership. It's a great program. Yeah. And then she received her master's in liberal studies. After receiving her degree, she signed a pro contract to play in Israel and now runs a private soccer club called VTech for her private soccer business. So we're going to get into all these things that you've been able to accomplish. So Vanessa, thank you so much for being a part and joining us today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
Oh, for sure. I'm excited. So just to get started off, how were you actually introduced to sports?
So I was introduced to sports by my parents. And I started at a very young age. I started playing soccer at 5.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, so it's funny because my birthday is actually next month, and it's going to be 20 years of playing soccer. It's crazy.
Wow.
But, yeah, so when I first started playing soccer, my parents started me out in the YMCA. I feel like most kids start there. And then eventually I grew out of that. And then eventually I played for a little league called Texas Heat Wave.
Okay.
I think it's only, I'm not sure if it's like a Texas thing or if it's just like here in Kingwood where I live. But so then eventually I got to the age, I think it's maybe 14, 15, where you qualify to play co-ed. And so I started playing with boys, and eventually in 8th grade, I started playing competitive soccer for Challenge Soccer Club. So it was a little process.
Wow. Okay. So fun fact, actually my first sport I actually played was soccer as well.
Oh, really?
Yes. I only played 1 year. I mean, I was okay, but yeah. It was not for me. And then you said you played co-ed. What was that experience like? Do you think that helped you with your journey at all?
Yeah, I think it did. I think it helped me get rid of my fear of like playing against other people, because I mean, obviously boys are a lot more aggressive in sport. And so I think it definitely helped me grow as a player.
Got you. And so soccer is the only sport that you've ever played?
So no, in middle school, I started playing a bunch of different sports because of like the season that it was. And so eventually I just stuck with soccer, but in middle school, you could play volleyball, basketball, you can run track. And so I did all of that stuff. And eventually when I started playing competitive soccer in 8th grade, I didn't have time for all the other sports. So I like just stuck with soccer. And then eventually it was just soccer in high school as well.
Got you. And so what's your second, I know soccer is probably your favorite sport. What's right after soccer for you?
I would say probably, I really like basketball.
I do too.
I was actually not bad at basketball. So so yeah, I think that was probably my second favorite sport.
Got you. And so help me. So I did, like I said, I only played 1 year. So to a casual fan out there, someone who doesn't watch soccer often, help us understand what makes soccer so unique and why maybe it's so special to you.
I think it's just the passion that players have for the game. because you see, like, if you've never really watched soccer and you watch a soccer game, people are just like, oh, like, what's the point of soccer? They just kick in a net, they go back and forth. And like other people say the same thing about football, like, oh, what's the point of football? They just run around, they stop every couple
Right.
seconds, and then like they just kick it
Right.
in the field goal or like pass a line. So I feel like people have their opinions about all different sports as to why like they have these rules and like what's the point of it.
Mhm.
But soccer is very intense. It's really physical. People don't think that you get a lot of injuries from soccer, but you do. And it's just like really passionate, and you can see like the passion on, especially if you watch like professional players play, just like the passion when they score a goal or when a keeper saves a shot or something. It's just like you can see the passion that they have, and it's just like really exciting. And it's just like for me, because I've played so long, that just like pumps me up because I'm like, I want to like have that passion, like
Right.
just like during the game and have that intensity as well. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Wow, and I actually agree because there is a lot of passion involved. Like I think it's one of the best parts of soccer is after someone scores a goal and like the
Yeah.
celebrations. I think that's like that is amazing to me.
Yeah. It's yeah, it's just funny like when players score, just like all the different celebrations, they all have like their different meanings, whether it comes from like their family or whether it comes from like something that's going on like around the world. And it's like cool to see how like players are able to like use their celebrations to like get a meaning out to the world, that are the people that are watching.
Oh, so these aren't just typical celebrations. Like these are well thought out. Like it's usually they have
Yeah.
a message behind it.
Some of them do.
Okay.
Some of them are they're just funny. They just want to like entertain the fans, obviously, but some of them actually do have like meaningful messages behind them.
Mhm. And so one more soccer question about like the rules. So I've always wondered, why is there additional time added to the end of the game?
So the
I've
extra
never understood that.
the time. So say there's like a injury in the middle of the game, then that's like taking away from the 90 minutes that are played in the actual game. So then um, the referee will add on those extra minutes to the end of the game. So some in high school soccer and college soccer, there isn't really extra time because of like they have like the scoreboard with the actual time on it. I've
Right.
noticed that when I played in college, but in professional soccer they have extra time so that those players can get like the extra minutes added
Got
on
you.
in case there's an injury or something like that. So
So like it doesn't, because like in football, if someone gets injured, like the clock stops. And
uh-huh.
so that's why I'm kind of like, how come the clock just doesn't stop when
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
happens?
Yeah, the ref, they usually they're pretty good at keeping track
Got
of
you.
the minutes and stuff. They have like the sideline referees, and they have the main referee, and then they have one on the side that like holds up the sign when the numbers, when their substitutions made.
Mm,
So like all of them have like watches on. They're all keeping track of the extra time that needs to be added on at the end.
got you. Well, thank you for enlightening me on that. I've always wondered
Yeah.
why there's extra, like why it doesn't stop. So that makes a lot of
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So for you, when did you discover that you were pretty good in volleyball and that you could like make the next step and play collegiately and
Uh-huh.
eventually professionally?
Um, so my dad started playing soccer when he was pretty young. He was raised in Spain, and so obviously soccer is like the main sport over
Mhm.
there. And so, like I said earlier, I started playing competitive soccer in 8th grade, and so it was just like um, it was just playing the other sports. They just didn't. I loved playing all of them, but soccer was just like the main one that I like wanted to stick with and play, and that I could like be successful in.
Right.
And so, and I would say like I'm pretty fast.
Yep.
So so I like really like to take on players and make runs and sometimes sneak up behind defenders and take the ball away from them. And so I just like the whole playing soccer thing is just, I love it. So
Yes. Was there a moment for you, like when you were playing or like in practice, where you're like, oh, I'm actually, I don't want you to, I know you're humble, but was there a
yeah.
moment for you when it happened, like, oh, I'm actually one of the better players on the team, or did it just, were you just always naturally one of those top tier athletes?
Um, I think obviously I had to work for it. I had to
Right.
work to get up. I had to work to get into shape. I had to work my butt off, especially I'm sure we'll talk about it later, my injuries that I
Mhm.
had. Um, just I had to work 10 times harder than my teammates because I would say I'm a little accident prone, I'm a little injury prone. So just working 10 times harder, just like that success that I had at the end just makes it sweeter.
Right, for sure. Oh, that's
Yeah.
great. That's great. So
Mhm.
let's talk about the student side of you being a student athlete. What
Mhm.
type of student were you growing up, like in middle school and in high school?
I actually wasn't a very good student.
Okay. Hey, we love transparency on the podcast. So that
Yeah, yeah. So I got good grades. I got A's and B's, a couple C's here and there. But my parents, I owe it to my parents for getting me through education through the younger years in middle school and high school because I was mainly focused on sports. I was mainly focused on soccer, and they were always on my butt about school, which like I owe it to them because I'm really glad they did, even though at the time I was just like, oh my God, like leave me alone.
Mhm.
But they helped me get through school, and I appreciate everything that they've done to get me to where I am today.
Yes. So what would you tell a student athlete? Because I was the same way. I just wanted to do my work so I could go ahead and go to practice. So
Yeah.
what would you tell a student athlete who might be thinking like those things? Like what helped you ultimately? I know you said your parents, but are there any like strategies or tips that you can give them to help them like move forward and get past just thinking about like going to their sport and making sure they take care of the academics?
Yeah. Well, I think the main thing is that I think when in high school soccer and then going into collegiate soccer, that if you don't pass your classes, you don't play.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I feel like that's like one of the main things that an athlete should have in the back of their mind because if they don't pass, they don't play.
Right.
So that my parents also helped me, and I think the coaches and all the academic advisors that help in college like also help to keep you on track as
Right.
well. So
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I think they can get a yes. Those advisors. A lot of times we have like resources available to us, and we don't
yeah,
use them.
yeah,
And
so,
so, yeah, for sure, I like that. So I don't know a lot about club soccer. So tell me kind
mhm.
of what that scene was like. Like how'd you get started in club soccer, and what and why did you ultimately start doing club soccer?
Okay, so like I said earlier, I started high school or club soccer in 8th grade. My at the time, well now club soccer is actually very expensive. And
Mhm.
so my parents couldn't afford to put me into a competitive club. And so we had been thinking about it for a while. And then eventually my dad put me into competitive soccer. And so it was a little rough to begin with because those girls that were on the team that I eventually made, I made the second team to start off with when I first started playing there. Those girls had been playing together for a while, and so it's hard to obviously come into a new team. You don't know anybody, and like you don't know like you're just coming from playing co-ed with some boys that don't really know how to play soccer either. And so it's like kind of intimidating to show up and these girls have been they're like, oh, they're playing competitive soccer, like they're probably really good. And
Mhm.
so you just don't know. It's like a completely new environment. And so I played on that second team for a couple years and eventually I did really well. And I had one of the coaches that recruited me to play competitive soccer. He would tell me every year when we had tryouts, so I'm going to move you up to the first team. I'm going to move you up to the first team. And it never happened. And so I was getting kind of frustrated. My parents were getting kind of frustrated because, like, honestly, playing for the second team against the other girls in the same, like, division, same bracket that we were in, it was just too easy.
Got you.
I wasn't getting any better. I was just playing against these girls that weren't very good, and so it wasn't competitive for me anymore. And so eventually they created a new league called ECNL.
Okay.
I think it was maybe a year or two. It was maybe like 2 or 3 years after I had started playing competitive soccer. And it's called the Elite Clubs National League. So that was like the very first time that they had created that league. Okay. And supposedly it's for like the top players in that area. And so they had tryouts, and I made the ECNL team. And so I completely skipped over the first team and went to the top team that they had just created. I did like well in the tryouts and everything. And so I had a feeling that some of the girls on the first team, they didn't really like that, because I had just started playing for challenge, and all of a sudden I'm like on the top team and like skipped over everyone else. And so eventually there was, so like throughout the year of like the season, there's tournaments that are called showcases. And so these showcases, they have them in San Diego and Florida. And so the team would travel to that location, and there would be other teams in that ECNL league, and those teams that would travel, and they would play in front of college coaches. And so that's like basically how you started to get recruited by college teams.
So how old were you when this process was going on?
This was probably maybe like 16, 17.
Okay.
Yeah. So so we would go to those showcases, and I think it was either the San Diego one or the Florida one I did really well in. And I think it was maybe on the weekends, the next week, or when we had practice, one of my club coaches came up to me and said, "Hey, like, there's a school called SMU that's interested in you." And so I was like, SMU? Like, I've never heard of this school. Like, I don't know where it is. And I thought it was like a brand new school.
Right.
And it like turns out SMU's been around for a long time. And so I like got really excited and everything. And so then junior year hit, junior year of high school hit, and I had gone on my unofficial visit. I had visited the campus. I had talked to the advisors, the coaches, and I saw a game on my visit, and I just like immediately fell in love with the campus. And just like I immediately fell in like all the people that were there to like help me. It was just amazing how many resources and how many people were there to help you. And so I think, I'm not sure how long after it was, but I eventually like made my decision to commit to SMU, and it was September of my junior year. Gotcha. And I was the first one on my team to commit, on my club team.
Wow.
Cool. So yeah, it was awesome. It was really exciting, and it's just like everything kind of just clicked. Right. And I had gone to visit a couple other schools. I visited Texas State. I visited Sam Houston because I wanted to stay in Texas. And so I was looking at schools that were pretty close to home. And so Dallas it's a little ways. It's like 3.5 hours from here, but it's not too close, not too far.
Right. Oh man, that's good. You gave us a lot of great information there. So we're going to stick a pin at SMU. I want to ask you a couple more questions. We'll come right back to it. So Vanessa, do you think that it is essential in that you have to play club soccer in order to get recruited to go to not even Division One, but any level of sports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it definitely is, because that's it's pretty rare for college coaches and like the good colleges, like the main ones, the Division ones, to come out and watch players at a high school game, because high school isn't really, it's not very competitive unless you're like a really good school. But I think it's really essential for women and boys to play club soccer, because that's, you go to these tournaments where the coaches know about, and so they're all going to go to that tournament to like watch players. So
in every sport like volleyball, basketball, and soccer that have club, it's interesting to me, because in football you basically only go through, most of the recruitment goes through your high school, and so to hear that high school sports is as competitive as it is in club is a different world to me. So yeah. So your recruitment, you talked about it a little bit. So you said you visited schools like Sam Houston, Texas State. How many scholarships did you have?
I got a few. I got a couple. I got one from Texas State, one from Sam Houston. I got one from Houston Baptist, and then I got one from SMU. And I think it came down to HBU and SMU, because HBU, like, I really liked the campus, and they offered me like a pretty good scholarship to play. And SMU offered a pretty good scholarship for me to play, but it came down to which one would get my name out there the most, which one is the most well-known school. And SMU is really the better choice.
Right, exactly. I know what you mean.
So yeah.
So you weren't offered a completely full scholarship to either school? So how was that process? Because like football, everything Division One is, if you're offered a scholarship, it's full. So what was that experience like for you, knowing that, I don't know what percentage you had, but how was that trying to piece together, like, okay, over here I might have $25,000 at SMU, but that's not even half of the tuition. And over here I have 50% tuition, and then like the book, room and board, and different things like that. So what was that process like for you?
Yeah, so when we were thinking about HBU, I'll just go ahead and tell you the percentages, but
okay.
At HBU they offered me 80% scholarship. So it wasn't full, but it was a pretty good amount since it's also a private school. And then at SMU, they offered me 65% to start off with. And so when we were comparing both, we were thinking about basically like 80% at HBU is pretty much the same pretty much the same 65% at SMU, because HBU isn't as expensive as SMU. So we kind of like looked at that, and so we eventually just came to the decision that, like I said earlier, that SMU was probably the better way to go because it's more well known. And so we were just like comparing like the percentages, and so we eventually came to that decision. And honestly, I liked SMU better than HBU, so that's obviously part of the decision.
Wow. Okay. So that is very enlightening. I think a lot of student athletes can learn from that you had like a priority list for you, like you liked it, the exposure that you would have, and really you said the numbers were comparable in terms of like the percentage and amount of money. So like, why not go over here? I like it more, and it's more exposure, so why not come over here?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think a lot of student athletes make decisions based on strictly liking the sport, or maybe even a coach, instead of putting those other things in priority. So I think that's a great process that you all had in choosing your school.
Mhm.
So now let's go to SMU.
Okay.
You're at SMU now.
hmm
And what was the biggest thing that surprised you once you came onto campus at SMU? This is
Um,
everything, not just sports, but everything.
yeah, I think uh, I'm gonna go to the education side
Okay.
because I think the amount of resources that athletes have at SMU is crazy. They're just like coaches, advisors, there's psychologists, there's trainers, there's just like everyone. There's like the equipment managers, like there's everyone. There's so many people that like play a part in like you being an athlete at a college. So it's just like a lot of, like we said earlier, that a lot of people, a lot of athletes don't utilize the resources that they have. And then when they realize that they actually had someone to talk to or had found out about this person, it's too late. And so I think that was the main thing that surprised me. And that was one of the things that I loved about SMU and why I chose to go there.
That's good. Were there any specific challenges? So we'll go to your injuries later, but were there any challenges that you had to overcome outside of the injuries? Maybe like your first year when you were a freshman that you had to kind of like get in the balance and figure out like your own schedule and be independent?
Yeah, so it was definitely freshman year was probably the hardest year because it was my first time like basically going to live on my own, and my parents weren't there to like help me with homework and whatnot. And just like I think it was definitely a challenge because I had to leave like all my friends here and go play soccer. I had to leave early for summer school and leave for off season or for preseason camp. And so I think just the trying to get used to the environment and just like school and soccer and traveling and everything, it's tough.
Yes. I didn't realize how strenuous the travel was myself until we started. I'm like, okay, we're leaving the day before to go
Yeah.
to Florida. I'm used
Uh-huh.
to driving the same day an hour
Yeah.
to go to school, to go play at
Exactly.
different school.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the biggest thing, I think the hardest thing for me was when we would travel and go to like a different state for games, especially if it was like we had to leave for like a week or something. We had like 2 games in a week or something like that. And just like it was hard because maybe that week your teammate doesn't have homework and you do, and you like see them, they're just like chilling on the bed watching TV, and then I'm over here like I have like a bunch of assignments due, like I just want to lay in bed and watch TV too.
Yeah.
And so I think that was like one of the harder things for me when we were traveling, was just like balancing homework with like you gotta choose. It's obviously it's homework first, but it's hard to see your teammates just chilling over there on the couch or on the bed watching TV because you want to just do that too.
Yes. I'm so glad you brought that up because that's my next question for academically. Like,
Uh,
we talked about your academics a little bit earlier. So how did you ultimately, I mean, you have a master's now, so you did pretty well. So how did
yeah.
you shift to that independent thinking as academically?
I think just maturity wise, I just figured out what was more important. It's like I needed to get my work done. If I got my work done, then I could go and lay in bed and watch TV. So I think just as like you just have more experience and you get used to all the traveling, and I think as you do it more and more, you do it every year for 4 years,
Right.
you just get used to, all right, it's school first and then you can relax and do all that other stuff. So
Yes, you said something very profound in that you figure out what's most important. Like
mhm.
you realized that doing this work is the most important thing to get me ultimately where I want to be. And so
Yeah.
that's super, super important.
hmm
So now going into your freshman year, If I'm not mistaken, you did have, unfortunately, a season-ending injury your freshman year.
Yeah.
So walk me through your mentality, because I mean, going your freshman year is a very big year because you want to go in there, you want to show your teammates that you're as good as you were advertised and that you
Yeah.
belong, and then you have an injury. So what was that experience like for you?
It was tough because so so yeah, my first injury was pretty tough because I had heard of other athletes tearing their ACLs, but I was just like, I don't think that's ever gonna happen to me. And so then my third game into my freshman year, my first year, I was dribbling and I touched it too far and I ran into the goal. So I was on the ground a little bit and like I had ran into goalkeepers like plenty of times before, and I was just like, it's just like a little, it just like hurts some, but like I'm sure I'll be fine. Like I'll get over it and I'll just like walk it off some and then I'll be fine. And so then the trainers came and they did the little like knee test on me. I'm not sure what the name of it is called, but I just call it the knee test. And they like helped me off the field and they ended up putting an ice bag on top of my knee and on the bottom. And I didn't go back in after that. And so I was like, maybe it's just like a little injury, like I'll be fine in a couple days. So it's just like a little bruise and that's it. And so I ended up going to get an MRI and I got the results back in a couple days and they had told me that I had torn my ACL. And so I broke down like right there in front of the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And because it was tough news to hear. And so yeah, it was tough because I like had never expected to tear my ACL, especially 3 games into my collegiate freshman year.
Right.
So yeah.
And apparently you did well because I mean you played as a freshman, and playing as a freshman is not easy to do.
I ended up starting the 3 games that I played in, and I was killing it. I was doing really well, so I was like, all right, like freshman year, it's gonna be good. And then I ended up getting hurt, and so I honestly to say, like I was actually very positive throughout the whole process. I was like, yeah, it's gonna take 6 months. Like that's such a long time, but I mean, I stayed pretty positive through it, and I came back even stronger. So.
Wow. So how were you able to stay positive? Like what were some of the thoughts you were thinking about?
I think it's just like for me, just like I'm overall a pretty positive person, and so I think like that had a lot to do with it, and just like when I came back and just like watching my teammates, like they were practicing and I was on the sideline doing this and stuff. So it was hard to like see that they were progressing and getting better. And then, I mean, I was getting better and progressing in my own way. And it was tough, but I eventually got through it. So.
That's good. And you sure did, because the next year you actually made the all rookie team for the conference. And so how did that feel for you, not only to come back and start, but to be named to the all rookie team that very next year after tearing your ACL?
It was awesome. It was a really awesome feeling to be on that team because I like feel like all my hard work paid off. And I think my positivity had a lot to do with it. And then like the support from my teammates and my coaches and the trainers helping me. And I think that all that had like a really big part of like my return back onto the field. And I just had like this hunger and this desire to like, I just want to like be better and score, and that I just had this drive to just score goals.
Right.
It's just like a hard feeling to describe. Just when you haven't been playing for so long, it's just you feel like rejuvenated, like you've like started back from the beginning, you started over, and you're just like ready to play again.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard that a lot of people that have like season-ending injuries, like they have a better appreciation for the sport
Yeah,
after
exactly.
that. Because like, man, I haven't had a chance to play in, like you said, 6 months.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's really good. And so you have an all rookie. You make the all rookie team, and the
Hmm.
next year you make the all conference team. So how did that feel to make another shot and have another accolade under your belt?
Got another accolade.
Yes, to have another accolade under your belt.
It was just like a good feel. It's just like a great feeling. Just going back on what I said before, that it just feels like that my hard work has paid off, and just I had to work 10 times as hard as my teammates to get into shape and to get my touch back on the ball. And so it's just like a really rewarding feeling to come back and be on those teams.
Yes. And then, unfortunately, I believe this is your fourth year on campus.
Hmm.
You had another tough injury after being to the all conference team?
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah,
this
so
is
this go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, so this is the second time since you've been in school that this has happened. So
Yes.
I can only imagine, like the first time's one thing, but like to have
Mhm.
for it to happen again, what type of mental and physical toll did that take on you?
So this one, I wasn't so positive during this one actually.
Okay.
Um, so so I'll explain to you like what happened. So we were playing our first conference game away in Memphis, and we were playing, and I was like asking for the ball, and a girl just hit me from the side, like she just blindsided me,
Mhm.
and I like felt that feeling that I felt first time when I tore my ACL, and I was like, oh God, like it's gone again. I was like freaking out. The trainers from the other team brought me crutches, and I was just like, not again. And so we got back, I ended up getting a MRI, and I had partially torn my ACL. So I had not torn it all the way.
Mhm.
So I guess like I was a little relieved. But then I went to the doctor, and he was like, so, I mean, it's a good thing that your ACL isn't gone all the way. But the thing is, like, your ACL could go tomorrow, it could go in a year. So,
Wow.
like, you never know when that thing, you could step off a curb and it could be gone. Like, you
Right.
don't know. And so I had that in the back of my mind, and I'm like scared to play now, because
Right.
like, what if I do something that I do at everyday activities and it's just gone, like right there.
Mhm.
And so it was hard. It was tough to hear that, but I was trying to push through it. I went back to rehab for like 3 weeks. I did some rehabilitation and some stuff to strengthen my knee. And then my first practice back, I was wearing a brace, and we were practicing on our field on Westcott,
Mhm.
and we were doing a shooting drill. And I received the ball, and I shot it, and I was fine. And then I went to the other side, and I received the ball. As soon I planted to shoot, as soon as I made contact with the ball, I just heard and my
Wow.
ACL was gone. It was gone.
Wow.
So, so I ended up tearing ACL. When the doctors got into my knee for surgery, they found out that my meniscus was partially torn. My lateral meniscus was partially torn. My medial meniscus was torn.
Mm.
Um, then I had something called a chondral lesion. And so basically that's when your bones like hit each other. And I basically scraped a quarter-sized chunk of cartilage off my bone.
Ooh.
Yeah, and so I did that, and then I had an MCL sprain as well. And so when they went in to fix it, they took a chunk out of my medial meniscus. They cleaned up my lateral meniscus. For the chondral lesion, they poked holes into my bone so that the blood flow could go through and heal it. properly, and then obviously they fixed my ACL, and then MCL heals on its own. So it
Wow.
was a lot. It was a lot.
So quick question,
It took,
sorry. Was this the
yeah,
same leg for both or each leg one
yeah,
time?
no, it was the same knee.
Okay, same knee. Okay.
Yeah. So it took me a year to come back, a little more than a year to come back. I was on crutches for about 6 weeks, or no, sorry, I was non-weight bearing for 6 weeks, and I was on crutches for about 2 months.
Wow.
So it was tough. It was really hard.
So as you're going through this in your sport, did this injury or these injuries, did that ever overflow into other parts of your life? Like that, did it ever affect your education because you were like, I don't want to do this, or did it affect your relationships or anything like that?
It definitely affected school.
Okay.
So with me, how I work is that if I don't see myself progress, then I lose motivation.
Mhm.
And so because I was non-weight bearing for 6 weeks, I wasn't able to put my leg down and put any weight on my leg. And so when I was doing all that, I was basically doing all my exercises on the table in the training room. And so I pretty much went into depressed mode for a while, and it was hard because I didn't want to go to class. I didn't want to do school. I was just like, what's the point of me doing these exercises if I'm not progressing, if I'm not getting better? I don't see myself progressing, so like, what's the point? And so with school, I was like, I don't even want to go to class. I don't want to, because I was on crutches, and it was just so hard for me because my mom thankfully came down to help me. She was with me for a couple of weeks, and she was cooking for me because I had my own dorm. I was by myself.
Mhm.
And so she would cook and help me clean, help me take a shower, because I couldn't get my leg wet. I was like in a brace full time on crutches. And so it was just really hard to get around to class, and I just didn't want to go. And then my trainers finally convinced me to go see the sports psychologist. And I eventually talked to her, and I went through a couple sessions where I would just cry the whole time. It was just hard to talk about it. And so her philosophy was that the more you talk about it, the more comfortable you get with it.
Mhm.
And so we just talked and talked and talked until finally, like, I didn't cry anymore about it. It was just like a thing of the past. And so eventually I got through it, and the doctors told me that I probably wouldn't play soccer again.
Mm.
And here we are playing soccer
Exactly,
still.
exactly. We're going to come to that. We're going to come to that. I just had a quick question about your degree plan that you chose. So you got
Yes.
what made you choose to get your bachelor's in sport performance leadership and then ultimately get your master's in liberal studies?
So the sports performance and leadership is obviously another word for it is coaching, basically. And so I honestly didn't really know what I wanted to do after college. I knew I wanted to continue to play soccer, but after college, I actually coached for Challenge. I was helping out little kids
Mm-hmm.
in the academy. And so I just kind of always had a passion for coaching, for helping younger kids reach their potential and to get better, and just like seeing them progress is what makes me happy, because I like seeing myself progress, and so if I see them progress, then it just like makes me even better.
Yes.
And so I think that's why I stuck with it, and eventually we'll talk about how that led to creating my own soccer business. So for the master's degree, I was fortunate enough to do a work study program with Hero in the equipment room. And
Oh,
so, yeah, so I was fortunate enough to do it with him, and it was a lot of fun. I love Hero. He helped me so much, and I was able to like work events with him, especially I think I was just men's soccer with him. So I would just like I would go help him with the games, and I would just like help out with the laundry and everything. So it was a lot of fun to work down there in the equipment room with him. So like just to see like all the hard work that the equipment managers put in, it's just like amazing, and it just gave me a little bit of it just opened my eyes a little bit to see like how hard they work down there for athletes.
got you. That's really good. So we're almost
Yeah.
done here. So now we're to the point. After you get hurt, you play one more season,
Mm-hmm.
and then after playing that season, you end up signing your first pro contract.
Mm-hmm.
So my first question is, how did that opportunity come about?
So I used to play for a team in Austin, and I played for them this past summer. And the manager of the team, his name is Danny, he got me in contact actually with the manager for the team in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And so he messaged me, and he was like, hey, like there's a team in Israel, it's like a professional opportunity. And I was like, oh, like that's freaking cool. So
Yes.
so he was like, I'll send you the manager's number and everything. So we got in contact. I eventually, so this was like literally all in a span of 3 days. So the first day, Danny had the manager messaged me. Then the second day, I talked to the manager and I talked to the coach. And by the third day, they were like, we want you. We're gonna start figuring out your flights, your ticket, and everything. And then by the next week, I was gone.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
so it
no
all happened.
tryout, no nothing, just.
Nope, they saw film. I sent them film
Mm-hmm.
from when I played. Yeah, just film. They saw my film, and then that's like pretty much how it all started.
Wow. So you're going to Israel.
Mm.
What was it like? Did you have to learn, first of all, did you have to learn a new language?
No, I didn't. Thank
Okay.
God.
And so what was it like being in Israel? I don't know how many months/years you were there. So what was that experience like for you?
So I was only there a couple of months because I came back because of COVID.
Uh,
So the experience was crazy. So there were a couple girls on the team that did speak English, so they were able to like translate for us. The manager actually is from the US, so she spoke really good English and
okay.
also they speak Hebrew over there.
Mm.
And so the coach also spoke English. She had an accent, but she spoke English, thank God, as well. And so just like the whole experience, like I just never would have thought I would go play in Israel. Like it's just amazing to me that I got to go over there and play. The experience was amazing. All the girls on the team were amazing. It was just there were 3 other Americans on the team. And one of them, her family is from Israel. And so they actually came down to visit for a week or 2. And I was really appreciative because they took us along with them. And so we went to go visit Jerusalem. We visited Jerusalem, and then we got to go to the Dead Sea and float in it, which was like an amazing experience. And it was just like I'm just like really grateful that I was able to go and play and go visit that country.
Yes, I can only imagine. So what was the athletic experience like in terms of competition, and how was it like to be you're a professional athlete?
Uh-huh.
So what were the expectations? Was it different from college?
So the team, I'm just gonna be honest. The team wasn't very good.
Okay.
Just because they were at the bottom of the bracket. So I think they were trying to bring in more players so that we could help them move up in the standings.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just felt like more of a club environment more than a professional environment. So it was awesome because it was basically like when you play professionally, like that's your job. Well, all you do is play soccer, you rest, you eat, you sleep, and play more soccer. So literally that's just like living the life. I'm over there in a different country visiting different places that I had never would have thought I would be able to go to, and I was just playing soccer. So it was just an amazing experience, and just like the team, all the girls were amazing, and I would probably go back there to visit if I were to go back and play. I would like to play for a better team. But overall the experience was great. The expectations of the girls, there were a couple girls that were very young, and so it's hard for me to say that was like more, like there were more expectations than college, because I think college was, compared to that team, was tougher.
Got you.
And so but overall the experience was great. I'm hoping that I can maybe be signed by another team in January. So fingers crossed.
Yes, we'll definitely be hoping for that too. The same for you here on the podcast.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. So the last piece is that you've mentioned it a few times throughout the podcast, but you have just recently started a business. So when did you start the business, and what made you ultimately start the business?
My parents gave me the idea to start a private soccer business, just because we had seen there's a million little soccer businesses around on like social media, and you just see like a bunch of different little soccer businesses of people that they have their own place and they do private training with kids. And I just thought like maybe instead of working for club, because working for my old club was awesome, but it was just hard because like you have to obviously work on their time, and just with my own business, I can like schedule my sessions when I want. And so my parents gave me the idea, and I was like, I was just like, okay. And so I ended up making business cards, and I kind of like left it alone for a bit. I had like a couple girls that I trained, and then I ended up going to Israel, and then I didn't really like get back to it. And so eventually one day I was like, I'm just going to make an Instagram for this page and see for Instagram for VTech and see how it goes. And so eventually like I started making videos on iMovie, and I really enjoyed like the editing part. And so I eventually it started growing. And so I started posting more and more videos, and I've gotten some followers. And obviously like a new business is going to take some time to grow. So so far I only have 6 girls. So it's a start.
That's a great start. That's a great start.
Yeah. So hopefully, I'm sure once I stop playing, because it's hard right now because I have to set time for myself to train. And so, and for myself to go to like other practices and stuff. And so I feel like once I stop playing soccer, then that's when I can solely focus on the business and then make it grow more.
For sure. And so right now, do you currently just service the Houston area or the Kingwood area?
So I do Kingwood, Atascocita, the Woodlands, and Humble. Gotcha. So I have a couple in the Woodlands, and then I have a couple in mostly a couple here in Kingwood and then a couple in Atascocita. So we're getting around 3 different places. So.
Oh, that's great. I just want the people on the podcast, if they're in the area, for them to go and check you out so you can help them with the skills.
No, yeah, thank you.
Oh, for sure. So last piece that we're going to talk about. At the end of every podcast, I ask all of our student athletes who come on to say, can you give me 3 to 5, and it can be as many as you want, pieces of advice for those middle school and high school student athletes that will help them in their journey to getting to where you've had the opportunity to go in your life and be a college and professional athlete?
So first thing I'd say is don't give up on your dream. If you want it bad enough and you know that you can make it, don't give up on it. Work hard, work your butt off.
Yes.
Because it's if you slack one bit, then you might not make it. So I would say second thing is take advice. Second thing is listen to I would say listen to your, not elders, but listen to older relatives that have like experience with all this stuff, because obviously if say like your parents, obviously sometimes you don't want to listen to them, but they actually have had more experience than you and they can give you some really good advice if you listen to them.
Yes.
Thirdly, I would say or third I would say that I would say stay positive. I think that's the main thing that's helped me get through everything that I've gone through, to injuries, to school, to waiting around since I'm in this period where like I haven't found another pro team to play for. It's hard to stay positive, and it's hard to keep that motivation, that mentality to keep working for what you want. And lastly, I would say that if you want to play at the next level, then you got to work hard for it, because there's so many other, whether you're a boy or you're a girl, there's so many other kids in this world that want the same thing you do. There's so many kids around the world, whether you're a boy or a girl, that have the same goal that you do. So only the ones that go out and practice on their own, that want to get better, that don't just show up to practice and just like, oh God, like another practice. You show up to get better, show up to improve, go out by yourself and practice, bring a friend. Because I've heard the saying that, what is it? The saying that, practice when no one's watching. That saying that I've heard coaches say, that you get better individually when you go out and practice by yourself, because that's the motivation that you have for yourself and the desire to continue to play. So those are probably my 4 things that I would recommend.
Yes, those are 4 powerful things. And Vanessa, your story is great. It's definitely inspiring, going to help so many student athletes. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. And for all those out there, as she said, work hard and you'll make your dreams come true. All right, thank you. See y'all next week.
Thank you.